doesn't change its energy policy, it could face a crippling energy crisis by the end of the decade. Joining us from our studios in Houston is John Hofmeister, former president of Shell Oil and CEO of Citizens for Affordable Energy. He's also the author of Why We Hate the Oil Companies, Straight Talk from an Energy Insider. John, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we'll get into your prediction of $5 a barrel, sorry, not $5 a barrel, $5 a gallon oil by 2012. But can you start off by painting us a picture of what you think America would look like if prices at the pump hit $5 a gallon as early as 2012?
Well, I think we go right back into recession in this country. The median wage in the United States is $38,000 a year. That means half of Americans make that or less. Average wage about $50,000 a year. At $5 a gallon, that's twice the price people were paying throughout most of the last year as we began to recover. It takes all that disposable income, it sends most of it to the Middle East or to Venezuela or other oil exporting countries. Money is not used in the United States to do anything but burn fuel for mobility. Meanwhile, the U.S. government is prohibiting drilling and getting in the way of every bona fide effort to try to increase oil production in the United States.
Okay, well, we're going to get to that, but let's back up here and get your reasoning why you think that gasoline is going to go up to $5 a gallon. If we look at the U.S. Energy Information Administration, their prediction out to 2012 is only a little over $3, not much more than where it is today.
And they missed it the last time, too, Andrea. They totally missed $100 oil the last time.
I'm just saying that's what that's their argument.
Right. And they never came close to the $147. Here's what the statisticians miss. As the U.S. recovery has moved forward, demand is about where it was back 4 years ago in 2007 going into 2008. So U.S. demand is recovering to what took those prices up in the first time. We're not drilling more, we're drilling less in the United States, means we have to import more. Asian demand is at an all-time high and continues to grow. It's higher than it was in 2008. And here's why the price spike will happen, I believe. What really crushes the consumer is the demand for diesel and the demand for jet fuel, which come from what's called the middle of the barrel. You got the top of the barrel for gasoline, the bottom of the barrel for bitumen and other heavy products. The middle of the barrel is where the most economic development comes from, which is use of diesel and use of aviation fuel. That's where economies are growing. And the only way to get more middle distillate is to get more barrels. But the world struggles to get above 85 million barrels a day. So every time we go to 86, 7, 8, 9 in demand, by 2012 we'll be at 90 million barrels a day. We don't know where those crude barrels are coming from, and that's going to push the price right back up into triple digits, probably near 150.
So, John, that's interesting. What you really are saying here is that we should look carefully, not just simply at the price of West Texas crude by the barrel, but where diesel and jet fuel at, because in a sense, they're the accelerants for the price at the pump and the other uses of that barrel.
That's what everybody who has a role in policy should understand. Consumers should understand that. Think about the Athabasca oil sands and the diesel that they demand to do the operations there. Well, there are projects all over the world. Today, there are shortages of diesel in China. That's where it all got started 3-4 years ago. Diesel shortages in China. And it became a much bigger problem through 2008 as the Olympics got closer and China developed a lot of backup power generation from diesel generators and bought as much diesel as they could. Well, now they're not buying for the diesel generators, they're buying for their infrastructure projects that use tremendous amounts of diesel. All the shipment of goods across Canada, across the U.S., diesel trucks carry most of the merchandise. It's diesel that can only be produced from barrels, and we need more barrels to make more diesel.
Okay, but why not then? Why aren't we just, what's so bad if we start importing more oil from other countries? I mean, one could make the argument that you're just you're just trying to scaremonger in a way to ensure that the Gulf of Mexico gets opened up before it should be, before the proper regulatory framework is in place.
Yeah, the world as a whole has never produced more than 85 million barrels. It's the world as a whole that's consuming. We'll be up to close to 90 million barrels of demand. And what I'm saying is, I don't think past 85 if the U.S. doesn't contribute more barrels to the global pool. So it's not just OPEC, it's not just oil exporting countries that have to produce, it's every country that has petroleum reserves should be producing as much of its domestic product for its domestic consumption as they could. That helps alleviate the pressure on the total global production cycle.
John, what about OPEC, though? Because surely they know that if prices go back up to $150 a barrel, you're going to have demand destruction. You're going to throw the global economy potentially back into recession. That's not in OPEC's long-term interest either. So why won't they allow new supply to come onto the market and maintain a price in the current band or a little bit higher?
Well, OPEC couldn't respond the last time because they were at their maximum production ceiling. And they couldn't produce more because they just didn't have the capacity to produce more. I'm suggesting that capacity has not really improved. Now, in the short term, there is some overhang. If prices get up over $100 a barrel, that may bring more OPEC production into the market. But I'm suggesting it will not be enough to make up for the total global demand, and we will go through another vicious cycle of high prices because Western democracies, for some reason, have become very anti-hydrocarbon. The U.S. is leading the pack in trying to make hydrocarbon production, meaning oil and natural gas and coal, that much more difficult to produce, as if we're beyond oil. The point is, we're not beyond oil. We're not beyond coal. So we're strangling in the United States by regulation the ability to produce more hydrocarbon at a time when we need more because the economy needs more. I'm not against wind and solar and biofuels. I advocate for that all the time. But it's such a small part of the energy supply that we can't approach this as an either-or situation. We need both hydrocarbons and we need alternatives because total demand for energy, at least in the United States, with the population continuing to grow, will continue to increase. And I just want to see, why can't we have government policy that enables energy production instead of disables energy production?
So let me just ask you, the Obama administration just basically blocked a new coal development in Virginia. I think it was West Virginia. They were going to basically cut off 2,000 acres of mountaintop there to produce more coal. The government has blocked it. Are you saying that that's what the government should be doing, that it should be allowing that kind of destruction to happen because we need to feed our energy habit?
There are always going to be trade-offs. I think that there should be every effort to find whatever accommodation can be found, but they didn't just stop a project, they withdrew a previously granted permit. In other words, Arch Coal had an approved permit from the Army Corps of Engineers in the U.S. The Environmental Protection Agency reached over the shoulders of the Army Corps of Engineers and pulled it back. For stated reasons, they changed the water regulation. They put a new regulation in place, and now the company had to meet the new regulation, and it hasn't found a way to do that yet. It's this kind of incident over and over again, which is making it ever more expensive because we're not increasing the supply. Now, in the short term, the Australian floods will help the coal market, and the prices will probably rise a bit. Production will rise a bit. But I'm looking at this over a 5, 10, 15, 20-year period, and I'm suggesting that the administration, not just this one, but previous administrations, operate on 2-year, 4-year political cycles to get the biggest political bang for the buck from the organizations that they are sponsored by. And in this case, the environmental groups are heavily invested in the Obama administration, and they're going to honor what those groups want rather than respond to the coal industry and to the needs of consumers.
I wanted you to talk about the future, but I think the Koch brothers and others in big coal certainly have enough money sloshing around K Street for the good of everybody. But where do we go from here? I mean, if Americans clue into the fact that oil is going to be a governor on their economy, is going to limit economic growth, then what's the policy response? Is it doubling down on hydrocarbons? Is that what you're saying?
What we need, and what I write about in my book, is a 50-year roadmap where we divide the 50 years into 3 phases: short-term, medium-term, long-term. We've got to get politics out of energy. And the way you get politics out of energy is the way we have in Western democracies created central banks. Central banks manage monetary systems to get politics out of monetary management. I'm suggesting the same kind of a governmental structure for energy management. An independent regulatory commission, which has a 50-year roadmap that looks at energy holistically, looks at the environment holistically, looks at the economy and the strength of the economy holistically, and makes choices about what we do in the 0 to 10 year, 15 to 25 year, 25 plus year time frame, and get it out of the hands of the special interests like the Koch brothers or any other special interests that are trying to use the political process, the 2-year cycle, to get their special interest advantaged, because the people that suffer are the American consumers and the economy as a whole. And special interests don't care about the economy as a whole, about their special interest. I think we got to get politics and energy separated and manage it in a totally different framework.
Well, John, from your lips to God's ears. Thanks again for coming on the show.
Let's hope we can move quickly. Thank you.
Thanks again. Well, Andrea, I don't know.